Hi, my name is Mandolin Royal, and today I wanted to take a couple of minutes and talk about where I am with our poultry, where I've been, and where I hope to head. These birds in front of me, I never thought I'd really see the day that would be eating our own chicken. I didn't start our poultry journey as dual purpose. When I first got chickens, I was just a little kid, but I quickly got attached to hatching eggs. It was the best part about the entire process, was watching the eggs hatch, watching the chicks grow, and every season, for a lot of years, the same problem kept happening over and over, where I'd find myself with too many boys, they weren't going to lay eggs, most of them weren't breeding quality, and I had to figure out where they were going to go, because they couldn't stay with me. You have to have the flock dynamics appropriate with the right number of boys and girls, and for me, that number has worked out to be right about one boy for every 5 to 12 hens, depending on pen size and what their variety is, and if I have a place to house boys where they're away from the girls. That way the girls don't get too stressed out and the flock dynamic stays pretty stable. But with hatching, those boys, they're going to be 50% of the hatch. So for every 50 that you hatch, you're going to have 25 boys, and you really don't have room for more than 5 of them, depending on what your housing situation is. So one day when I was at the grocery store, I was going to buy some chicken. Meanwhile, I had 11 cockerels at home that needed a new place to go, and it dawned on me, wouldn't extra cockerel taste like chicken? So I didn't buy chicken that day, and I went home and I talked to my husband to see if doing the dual purpose thing was something he was interested in doing. I explained what our issue was. I explained how the extra boy thing was something that happened every single year, and it would be good if we had a purpose for those extra boys to where they could stay here. So he agreed that we would try it, and we went on a little learning adventure. The boys I had at home at that point, they were leg barks and Easter eggers. We went ahead and we learned how to process, and we got them into the freezer. We let them age a couple of days, and then we cooked them. The meat, it was a little bit stringy. There wasn't much of it. They were 16 weeks old, which the internet said was a good time to process, but for those birds, that was not a good time. And the overall dinner experience, it really wasn't great. So then we started trying a lot of different breeds. I would bring them in, we'd grow them out, we'd process them, try them on for size. And we cycled through a lot of different types. It wasn't until later when I found out that the bloodline has a lot to do with it. Some of the dual purpose breeds have gotten away from their secondary purpose. The breeding went more egg derived, and the table qualities just weren't there. So when you're sourcing your birds, you really want to take the time to find a flock that's being used for the purposes that you want them for. So that led us down into some different varieties, and I tried Morans. I liked them, but I had to try 4 different bloodlines before I found one that had some meat on their bones, that grew before 24 weeks. And then the American breasts, we tried them, and they actually fit really well. I used to do the whole assortment of egg colors. I like to have blue layers, green layers, olive eggers. Now I just have 2 colors of eggs, and that's okay. The light colored eggs, they go to the American breasts. Brown eggs are from the Morans. Now when you're breeding them, there's a lot to pay attention to. In my future videos, I'm going to go into some of the things that it takes for selecting every season to make sure your results the following season are going to be just as good or better. It's not something you can slack off on, and it's not something you can ignore. So we're going to break all that down. But today, I wanted to break down these 2 birds, and I want to show you what's underneath this skin. Right now, they look really great. When we get in there, you can see some more differences between these 2 breeds. The American breasts, this guy was 21 weeks old. He made it onto our dinner list based on breed standard and based on the peers within his group. For a table bird, the American breast is very good. They have a thin skin. You can kind of see when I pinch it up like that how thin it is. They usually have pretty good fleshing all the way down their keel line. The keel is this bone right here. It's the breastbone, basically. His keel was nice and straight. His thighs are nice and meaty. There's pretty good meat up here in the front. And then for the Marans, it's black silver Marans variety. He ended up in this position because of this bend right here in the keel. He has a little bit of meat down here. Not too much, but some. Most of it's up here in the front. His thighs have a lot of meat in here. The Marans are a little bit hairier than the breasts. We can scorch that off if we were going to do a skin-on bake with them. There's hairier breeds of poultry out there. We gave Barnvelders a try. They dressed out a little bit smaller and a little bit less meaty, but a big difference was just how much hair covered the entire carcass. And when we scorched the hair off, you could see burn marks from where we did that just because of how prevalent it was. I've never seen anything like it since. So Barnvelders were out for hair. But these guys, we're going to split them down the middle. We're going to do a spatchcock cooking method with them. But by splitting them open, I'll be able to show you the differences of what's going on inside, as well as the color differences in the thigh meat. It's really neat. Some breeds, they have really dark thigh meat. The American breast really doesn't. It's sort of on the lighter side of coloration. The Marans are kind of in the middle. There's a lot of different ways we can cook these birds with their age. The main thing is to not try to cook them too fast. They're not going to be a grillable age unless we do a pre-bake. But in cutting them in half, we can pre-bake these, and then we can put them on the grill after that, treating them sort of like a rack of ribs. But let me get these birds split up and show you what's underneath that skin. So I have these guys split open in the spatchcock fashion. What that means is you cut the spine out, and that way you can open up the carcass while keeping the breast and the front of the bird intact. I had to use a bone saw instead of shears, so I didn't film that part. It's impossible to do it with one hand and film. So I got it done. Now here we are to look at them. I have the American breast on the left and the Marans is on the right. And this inside view right here, it shows some of the fat development in the different breeds. So this one, you can see there's fat up in here. There's fat in between the ribs. Right through here. These guys didn't have a special finishing. This is natural based on just regular old chicken growing methods. They had received just a regular 20% starter and some pasture access. They're 21 weeks old, so a little older than what we normally do, but I wanted to make sure that they were on the dinner list and I needed to see more growth from them. So this is the fat the Marans put on. There's a little bit in here. They're both derived in France, and I think the French really like chicken fat. Something I've noticed as we've been going through and trying out different breeds. So there's two pockets of meat that I like to hold and keep track of, and those are right here. There's a little scooped out pelvic bone in here, and it's right on top of the thigh, and I like to have these parts of the bird first when we're eating them. It's very tender because it's a muscle that never gets used. On the Marans, that's right here. And there's one on either side, and it connects really close to the spine. So I ended up nicking a little bit of it. But once the bird is cooked and you start breaking them down to get the meat off of them, I'm going to show you those little scooped out bones. So when you're breaking apart a bird, you can be sure to find those little tasty bits right there. In the body cavity, I didn't see anything out of the ordinary in here. They look pretty good. When you do the spatchcock to have them lay flat, right in here, you need to split that. And what I did when they were turned this way, some people will take a knife and they'll cut the cartilage, but I act like I'm going to give them CPR one time, just boom, once, and that does it. I don't have to get the knife out again. To show you the rest of what I wanted to show you, I'm going to have to peel some skin, and I'm going to need both hands for that. So I'm going to take another quick little break here, do some prep work, so I can show you more about what's inside here before we get to cooking. So I peeled some skin back, and that's going to let us get a look inside here. When you peel back the skin, that also creates your pockets to put your herbs and spices when it's cooking. That lets it mix with the juices of the chicken, so you get a more complete flavor profile versus just stuffing the inside where it has all this fascia and stuff in the way. The flavor really comes out with your herbs if you put it in between the skin and the meat. I found that to be the best method. Right here, you really can't tell the difference in the color of the thigh, but we can see that the breast bird has a pretty substantial thigh in there. Moran's does too. Typically the Morans do carry most of their weight in the thigh. There's some additional fat in here, and what that does is it's going to melt down when they're cooking and mix with the flavoring, and the juice will run through the rest of the bird during the cooking process and make for a really tasty dinner experience. The breast meat, again, there's a giant pocket in here. You can go all the way back. You can go down in here. You can put minced garlic in there. You can put some thyme and some rosemary, a little salt, a little pepper. They don't need butter, not with all the fat that's in here. You can just go ahead and skip that part. You can oil the outside of the bird. You can use some coconut oil and some herbs, some butter, oil of your choice. There is a little bit of a color difference in here, but it's going to cook to be the same color. It's just interesting to see what the differences are. And I do like to see what they feel like and where the meat is and what it looks like, because it lets me know if I need to make any adjustments to our breeding in these regards. And the way that you would find out is you do a pairing of a couple of birds, one boy, just a girl, maybe two, and then you grow out those offspring to dinner age, you eat them, and if it's good, you do it again. If something needs to change, then you have to change your breeding lineup. That breeding selection is where you find the meat and you put it on the future generations. If you're not doing that, you can lose it. And it doesn't take long to lose traits that you like to have if you're not selecting for them every single generation. So now that I have this skin loosened up, I'm going to pack it full of herbs and spices. And then we're going to set them up into cooking pans, a little bit of water. I have the oven preheated to 250 degrees so that we can start getting them cooking, getting them more tender, so that then they can go on the grill and get that barbecue chicken flavor. We're not going to use a sauce. I want the natural flavors and the herbs and spices to come through with a little bit of barbecue flavor. So now I'm going to start chopping on some garlic and getting out the spices. So we have some herbs prepped and ready to go. We have about a tablespoon of garlic, 4 cloves that were all a decent size. We have some salt and pepper. That was about half a teaspoon of each one. And then we have half a tablespoon each of rosemary and thyme. And then we have a 1/4 teaspoon of the coriander. That coriander, flavor-wise, is going to come on the back side and sweeten everything. And it's going to have a different flavor profile than just using the two by themselves with the rosemary and thyme. So now we're going to get everything mixed together. And then we're going to start packing it into the birds, right in between that skin and the meat. I'm going to get some stuff out of the way. We've mixed our herbs and spices together, and then we separated them for how much each bird gets. Now we're going to start working it underneath the skin on top of the muscle. We want to aim for an even disbursement throughout the whole bird. That way, as it cooks, it comes up even, and no one part is more flavorful than another. We did go ahead and pre-loosen the skin a little bit. You might find that there's some membrane still hanging on. Just go ahead and gently work that open a little more. You can rough them up a little bit to get everything in there. Just be careful that you don't tear the skin. Everywhere that the skin is torn, it's a leaky spot for those juices to escape, and you don't want that to happen. You want that to stay in there and sizzle during the cooking process. So while we keep getting these flavors in here, I'm going to go ahead and start prepping the cooking pans so that we can get these birds into the oven. So here they are coming out of the oven. I'm waiting on them to cool off a little bit so we can handle them, so we can get them outside and transfer it onto the grill. It's a charcoal grill. You're only going to spend about 12 minutes on there. They spend about 2 hours in the oven, long enough to get that skin pulled back a little bit on the leg. We have the silver Marans on the left. We have the breasts on the right. And you can see in the drippings, there's a lot more fat drippings on the right side bird than the left side bird. Either which way, we can use that chicken juice dripped over top of them or in some other recipes. I'm definitely going to save it. But now we're going to get that grill ready so we can get to the last part of this process. So we've brought them in from off the grill. Like I said before, they just got 12 minutes in there, just long enough to put some flavor on. Now that we have them cooked, I'm back to reflecting on how awesome this actually is to be able to breed, hatch, grow, process, and then cook our own chicken. I don't have to worry about getting new ones every single season. I have a useful place for the extra cockerels to go, and we're going to have a really tasty chicken dinner.